Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Thursdays with Friends, our online conversation on current issues. We have seen many of you recently at our Quaker Public Policy Institute and annual meeting held last month, and we had hundreds of people join us from all across the country for our theme of Choose Hope, Work for Justice. This was a really important gathering for many reasons, perhaps most notably the fact that we had 204 lobby visits in support of critical child poverty programs just before the Build Back Better bill was passed by the House. Beyond that, though, we also heard from Diane Randall, who we learned would be stepping down as General Secretary after 10 years of leadership. Further, we learned the General Committee approved FCNL's 5th General Secretary, Bridget Moix. So speaking of Diane and leadership, we have an opportunity today to hear some of the highlights for time at FCNL in our discussion today. I'm the show's producer for today, Alex Franzen. I'm substituting in for Wesley Wolf-Bear-Pinkham, who you might be used to doing this intro. And today we're going to actually turn around the interview tables here a little bit. Our guest host for Thursdays with Friends will be Stephen Donahoe, our Director of Development, and he will interview Diane Randall, FCNL's General Secretary. So with that, I will kick it to Stephen.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's so good to be here with all of you. Welcome to Thursdays with Friends, whether you're joining us on Zoom or on our live stream via YouTube or Facebook. We are so glad you're here. Welcome. Diane, as you know, is our regular host for Thursdays with Friends, and as such, she's asked some really insightful questions of guests ranging from Emma Belcher, the president of Plowshares, to Sister Simone Campbell, the former executive director of Network Catholic Lobby. And I hope you will help me to ask some really good questions today that draw on Diane's experience with FCNL over the last 10 years. Before we do dive into questions, I want to introduce Diane, who of course needs no introduction. But Diane has been the General Secretary of the Friends Committee on National Legislation since March of 2011. And before that, she was the head of the Partnership for Strong Communities in Connecticut, which is a state-based lobbying organization working on homelessness and affordable housing issues. Diane began her career as a high school English teacher in Omaha, Nebraska, and worked in Peace starting in 1983 as the executive director of the Omaha Nuclear Freeze Campaign. Diane relocated in 1986 to Connecticut, where she directed the state network to abolish the death penalty and worked for the Office of Urban Affairs of the Archdiocese of Hartford, launching a 20-year lobbying career in the state legislature in Connecticut. During that time, Diane also became the first executive director of the Connecticut AIDS Residents Coalition. And we're so glad to have Diane here with us today. Diane, you have inspired me and many FCNL staff and supporters around the country. And I'd love to start today by learning a little bit more about what inspired you to get involved in advocacy, dating all the way back to your days in Omaha.
Thanks, Stephen. This is a unique seat to be sitting in, and it is so really fun to see the names of so many people who have joined, to see your faces, to recognize people whose homes I've been in, who I've shared meals with, who I have worshiped with, who have inspired me along the way during my time at FCNL, and in some cases before that even. So. Well, when I think back to the time I was a school teacher, still a fairly young school teacher teaching English, and I learned about the Nuclear Freeze Campaign. It was also about the time that I had my first child. And so I would say that becoming a mother was a pretty big inspiration to me to think about how to make the world a better place and how to make it safer and more secure. And so that was a prime motivation. In fact, my son, who turned 40 about a month ago, his very first outing when he was 5 days old was to go to a nuclear freeze meeting. So my children have had to learn about going to a lot of meetings, Quaker meetings and other kinds of meetings, and kind of hanging out with their mom. I remember one time, just to share a story, when I started lobbying on housing issues at the state capitol in Connecticut, there was always this process of signing up to have people in lines to sign up to speak at public hearings. That's how they did it at the State House. And one time my daughter had to come with me because it was after school, and we were standing in line at 5:30 in the afternoon, and she said, "Mom, is this what lobbyists do? They just stand around in lines all the time?" Of course, that's not just what lobbyists do, but we do go a long way to get action on the issues we care about, which is why it's so great to have such a vast network of people across the country who also are lobbyists in a way by building relationships with their members of Congress.
Yeah, absolutely. So lobbying goes back to the heart of what you've been doing for decades, which is awesome. And I love that you've done that with your kids as well. When I think about 10 years working with you, Diane, I think a lot about the young adult program, and it goes back again to your kids, and how young people have been core to this work and the expansions that we've done. And one of the moments that really stands out for me is actually a young adult conference we hosted at Pendle Hill. You and I were able to participate in that, and it kind of served as the grounding for the young adult program that we then were able to build through the Capitol campaign that people all across the country, including many of the people in this Zoom room today, gave to generously to support and have continued to support. And that's really been transformational. It's been transformational in my life and in young adults' lives and in FCNL's life. And I wonder if you could reflect a little bit more about that growth and the young adult program and why that started and how that has grown over the years.
Sure. Well, I learned that people my age who came to work at FCNL when they were in their early college years, finishing college, that was really the beginning, I think, with Ed Snyder of an internship program. And it kind of went up and down, I think, over the years. And so even before I arrived at FCNL, there had been a general committee futures working group that made it a priority that said, we want to make young adult work a priority at FCNL. And so the question was, when I got here, we had gotten through the recession, and the question was, if we can do a capital campaign, what would we do to make young adult work a priority? And so that consultation that you referred to at Pendle Hill, where we gathered mostly young adults, but others as well who, had experience among friends, but also experience working in advocacy and organizing, was really inspirational. Because the thing I remember the most, we asked Sharon Parks to come in and work with us and convene us to have a conversation. And Sharon talked a lot about how critical it is for people to make meaning in their lives in their 20s. And I think that's really true. Although I've said in a couple other settings, I think all of us are constantly looking for how we make meaning, and we find it in some of the advocacy work we do. We also find it in communities with each other, as we do this work together. But that particular conference, what was inspiring to me, of course, is that the young adults who were there had the best ideas. They knew what they needed as a population of people, or what they were longing for. And they also wanted us to keep asking other young adults what to do. And so out of that really grew the Advocacy Core program, as many of you know, which is now, I think, in its 6th year of hiring people through a application process to organize in their own local communities on one key issue. And but the great thing about that is that in designing the program, and I give our staff, Katie Breslin and Larissa Gil-Sanhueza, credit for refining this, along with Jim's leadership, is that we really knew that it was essential to build a cohort, so that there were peers of people working together. And that became a really key aspect, not just of the Advocacy Core program, but also of our program assistance program. The people like you, Stephen, like Susan, like other people who, like Jonathan Brown, who came to work for a year or more as a young adult out of college, was having this cohort with other people became actually a really important way to nurture and connect people, so anyway, that's what I think about. But I also think about our summer internship program, which we started, where when we first started it, we just wanted to have a regular way to have summer interns. And I will say that at first we didn't pay our summer interns. And about 2 years into that, young adults said, you have to pay these summer interns. And so we came up with a stipend. Again, nobody's going to get rich being a summer intern at FCNL, but it's an opportunity to say, you're doing work. And the summer interns who come to work with us, work hard and they really, really produce a lot. So that's exciting. But of course, I just have to say the fourth program, which of course is coming up in March of this year, become an annual program, is our Spring Lobby Weekend. When and I just need to say, a shout out to the donors who helped make this young adult work happen, because it has allowed us to really grow that engagement with so many people around the country at a high level. When I got here, I think the first Spring Lobby Weekend was maybe 100 people or so, maybe fewer. Now it's 500 people every year. We have that many young adults come who learn about lobbying and who, again, have an opportunity to get up on the Hill and really go through a kind of training. And some of them get very inspired and continue to work with us, which we like. Some of them get very inspired and go work with other organizations, which we also like. It's all good.
It has been so important in a lot of people's lives, and that's awesome. It's so powerful. And I know another area where we've really grown and under your leadership and pushing, it has been in our physical presence on Capitol Hill. You're sitting in 245 2nd Street, which we've had, of course, since the 50s, and was renovated in the early 2000s. But now we have 205 C Street, where we have the Quaker Welcome Center, and we have the Friend in Washington apartment above that. And now, again, a new growth of what was William Penn House and is now renamed Friends Place on Capitol Hill, where we're welcoming young people in early 2022 to stay there. And hopefully everybody will tell their networks about that opportunity. But I'd love to hear more about why grow the physical presence in Washington, D.C. What's the power of that, Diane?
Well, again, I want to say that I walked into an organization prepared to take action, who already had, under Joe Volk's leadership, had renovated this building and made it a LEED certified green building. And in 2007, I think, when that was finished, this building on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. was the first LEED certified building, which is kind of stunning when you think about how much we've changed and how much industry and building trades have changed even. So that now what was then a LEED certified building is standard building procedure. We recognize that we have to be greener in terms of how we develop buildings. So this building was finished. They being the General Committee and those who worked at FCNL, knew there was an option potentially to get the building next door. And literally the first meeting that I went to, the committee made the decision to purchase that building. And then we began thinking about, what would we do with it? We didn't want to just make it office space. It had apartments. There's a real need for housing. And so we rent out 3 of the 4 apartments. And one, as you noted, Stephen, we keep for a Friend in Washington program, which has been a great program. And particularly what's been fun to watch, as we've had Quakers from around the country, often people who've been part of the General Committee, but not always, who come and spend maybe a month, maybe up to 3 months volunteering at FCNL, doing some activity with us. But then they get to know the staff. And what's really fun is to watch how staff get to know them and appreciate our friends in Washington, because they come to see a different kind of Quakerism being practiced, if you will, people who are letting their lives speak every day through the volunteer work they do. So I'd say it's been a real blessing to have that residential unit. And then to create this Quaker presence through the Quaker Welcome Center has been just great. I just had this vision before we put it up to have one of those chalkboard, that kind of chalkboards that are on sidewalks, to put that up and say, welcome to worship. And we did that. I mean, before the pandemic, we put that out every Wednesday to say, join us for silent reflection. And it's not so much that we got people dropping in, but we got people curious, and people, we also use our building as with the big banner, as people know, the one, whether this one I think says, I believe in hope and gratitude, but we've often put, different signs up there. Obviously, love thy neighbor, no exceptions was up there for a long time. And then finally, we've had a longtime partner with what was once known as the William Penn House on East Capitol Street. And as they faced some financial difficulties, we wanted to step in and retain that space as a Quaker space. And so we have had some very generous supporters who've helped us make big investments in the sustainability of what is a beautiful house that will be able to house up to 40 people. And we're really keen on having groups come and stay there, groups that are going to be practicing civic education by their engagement for social justice. And already Sarah Johnson, who's our new director there, has told me today, we met today, she said, I have 35 groups scheduled for 2022 already. So it's going to really sing. I think it's, I have to say, I regret that I won't be around to be over there for the full opening, but I'm looking forward to it. I know it's going to be terrific. And I just, again, want to thank people, because there were people who, supported William Penn House, which is now Friends Place on Capitol Hill, through regular contributions. And we hope people will continue to see that as a way to support this presence on Capitol Hill.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. And you're welcome to come back, Diane, to the opening. Just so you know.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate the invitation.
This is the official invitation. So that's really exciting. And I know another area where we've grown, and I do believe this was your idea, to have the Quaker Public Policy Institute. Alex mentioned this in the introduction about just coming out of annual meeting in the Quaker Public Policy Institute, and to bring people from around the country when they're coming to DC to lobby and to learn to lobby, and how important that was to grow in that way. And so I'm interested in, why did you think that was so important, and how has that changed the organization?
Great question. I just need to go back to the real estate, because Ian had asked the question about the hard hat. And I have to say, when I saw that photo, I thought, wow, they found the most, extreme photo. I think I wore that hard hat only once, but we still have a couple of hard hats, and they're in Thomas Swindell's office. So, if you want to come to FCNL office sometime and try one on, go talk to Thomas. But of course, that was around the building construction. The Quaker Public Policy Institute, I will say, I think I was an inspiration for it, but I have to give credit again to my colleagues here. Jim Kaysen had long had an idea that we could engage more people in lobbying. And so the notion of taking our annual meeting as an opportunity for people to lobby, but also kind of building out and engaging other people who weren't part of our general committee, but who would come and lobby. And so now it's been a vehicle for our advocacy teams, but for anyone really who likes how we do our advocacy work. And we know that there are legions of people who appreciate our approach. They appreciate that we are nonpartisan. They appreciate that we are listening. They appreciate that we have a structure for how we train people. So, I think FCNL does some of the best lobby training ever. And we do it through our advocacy teams. We do it through Learn to Lobby in 30 Minutes. We do it at the Quaker Public Policy Institute. But, I would guess most people on this call probably have been to Washington to an annual meeting to lobby with us. And there is something I find still thrilling to go into a congressional office building, to go into a congressional office, to sit down with a staffer or a member of Congress, a senator, and have a conversation about what matters in people's lives, about what matters to create peace. It is so profoundly moving. So
Absolutely.
The more people that we can offer that experience to, the better. And so I continue to be very positive about our Quaker Public Policy Institute, and as well as Spring Lobby Weekend, these mega events that bring people to Washington.
Yeah.
And we hope that we can open it back up again soon and have more people coming. I will just say the ability to continue lobbying, even from our living rooms over Zoom, has been really quite amazing to me and successful. But you just don't get the thrill of walking through the building.
That's true. That's true. Well, speaking of lobbying, we do want to encourage people, if Susan will put in the chat, we have an ask to continue to lobby on the Build Back Better plan. So our Quaker Public Policy Institute was lobbying on a Thursday. The Build Back Better plan passed on Friday. So that passed in the House. We need the Senate to take action and to make sure that the child poverty programs that we've been lobbying for, you've heard about over and over and over again on this program on Thursdays with Friends. We need you to join us now one more time, or maybe it'll be a few more times, to take action to get this over the finish line. It's really critical. So I hope you'll do that.
Amen. Underscore 100%, Stephen. I had the opportunity to be on a radio media tour this morning, and I was talking to different radio shows around the country, and just talking to a couple of them about what the child tax credit does for people. There were these media people who didn't realize, like, there are millions of households who are already getting a child who are getting a payment that helps support their children. That passed with the American Rescue Plan earlier this year. But if we don't get this passed in December, it will stop. And so this is a proven program to reduce childhood poverty. There's a lot more things in the Build Back Better bill, but this is a transformational bill. It addresses economic inequality. It's an amazing opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Susan also put in the chat, if you'd like to share memories or stories or notes of encouragement to Diane, please do at fcnl.org/thanks, Diane. We're compiling those. We have time for some questions from the audience, and a couple have come in, one of which is from Elaine Wilson. Do the young people who have worked with FCNL, but then have gone on to other organizations, how do they bring a sense of how friends operate into those organizations? Or, the sense of nonpartisanship, or perhaps challenging hierarchies? Do we have any sense of that, Diane?
That's a great question. Stephen, I'd kind of turn that question back to you, because you actually have more connections around, with a lot of people, and have talked about it. I mentioned Susan, who works at FCNL, but I saw Tommy Renz on the call of, someone who is a program assistant who also does some fundraising now. But, I also just, the people who spoke at the annual meeting, Joey Hartman Dow or Sergio Mata Cisneros. Sergio is he works for Bread for the World, and he works very closely with us and Amelia on the Build Back Better program. And it's tremendous to see, what he is doing. And that's a very recent person, who's just gone on to another organization. But to a person, generally speaking, if I talk to someone and they say, oh yeah, I know someone who worked at FCNL, you all did a good job with those people, helping them learn how to do policy work and advocacy work.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that as well. And going back to even some of the earlier interns, talking about how they bring the skills. So one of them is writing. The FCNL is if you learn to write at FCNL, you learn to write well. And that skill, taking that onto other work, has been really powerful.
Well, and Stephen, let's not forget, our next general secretary started as a program assistant here.
Oh, right.
You all are going to get to hear from Bridget after the first of the year when she starts here, and she's got a great story. How working at FCNL really transformed her life, and so she's a great case in point of someone who's gone on, worked at FCNL, but also in other places. And so I think that would be a great event, Stephen, to have stories from the field. Thanks, Elaine, for that question.
I love it. That's so great. I want to lift up a couple other comments from the chat. Joan Broadfield said she's so grateful that the reimagined Friends Place will be opening out of William Penn House, and that she's been involved for years, and it's excited to see that step. So that's great. Also note, Joe Volk says he also started as an English teacher. So I don't know, that's pretty remarkable.
Okay, I have fun facts about 5 executives / general secretaries. What used to be executive secretary.
Are you saying 5 in 78 years, right?
5 in 78 years. Okay, so I'm putting Bridget into the mix. 2 were born in Ohio, and 3 were born in Iowa.
Wow, that's amazing. The Midwest.
Fun fact.
It's very strong. I love that. Okay, we have another question here from Paul. Let's see. I just lost it in the Zoom chat.
I think this is from Paul Parker, who is my counterpart. They say this. His title is recording secretary, but from Britain Yearly Meeting, who has become a real friend. So I'm thrilled that he's joined us today.
Yeah,
and it's late for him.
So what has 10 years in this role done for your spiritual life? And what has your personal spiritual life brought to you in 10 years in this role, Diane?
Well, it's made me think a bit more about how to talk about my spiritual life in a public way. Friends often are quiet about how we worship, what we believe, how we're touched. And yet our growth comes, I think, when we share those journeys. And so it's sometimes hard to talk about how lobbying can be a spiritual practice, because for many it is such a worldly activity. And I remember talking, at one event I went to, happened to be an event with Bradley Whitford, who some people know as a actor, movie star, who I said to him, as a Quaker lobbyist, and then asked my question, because I knew he had this connection to Quakerism. And Bradley's response was, well, that's an oxymoron. How can you be a Quaker and a lobbyist? And I think that that's part of the spiritual growth, is that, and it gets a little bit back to Elaine's question too, is how do we carry what is our spiritual life, what is our deepest calling, our sense of moral conviction into who we are, not just with our family and friends, but who we are publicly. And so I'd say that's certainly part of it. And I feel like it's also been challenged, not challenged in a bad way, but challenged in the sense of rethinking some of the existing knowledge I had about Quakers to how Quakerism influences people, particularly younger people who are curious, but may not want to be on a committee. So for those of us who are Quakers, we have to think about how do we engage with young people so that they can participate in what for many of us is a profound spiritual home.
That's a powerful note to come to a close. Remarkably, 30 minutes has gone by really quickly. I do want to give you a second, Diane, to answer the question of what are you going to do next?
Well, thanks, Stephen. So, I think about this, we were talking about that it's 10 years, a little bit over 10 years that I worked at FCNL, but I've actually worked for 50 years. I started working, as a teenager as a waitress, and I took some time off to go to college, and I took, a few weeks off when I had kids, but not much time. And I'm ready for a rest. I'm ready to not work for a while. So there's that. I'm going to stay in Washington, D.C. with my husband. We live here and really like the city. We have a daughter nearby. We have another one in Chicago, and we have a new grandchild up in New York City. So great to be with family. And I have a lot of friends back in Hartford, friends in New England, back in the Midwest, people who I haven't seen as much, and I really am looking forward to having time with them. I'm compiling a reading list, so if people have recommendations, I always check out Joe Volk's recommendations on Instagram. I'm happy for recommendations, happy for book groups. So all of that, at least initially, when you feel a call to make change, though, you may need to step out, but there will be another call. I know, that will be something that will captivate me, and I won't be able to sit down. I will have to stand up and do that work. I mean, that's what hope is, right?
Absolutely. It's a spiritual discipline, right? You always say that.
It is. That's right.
It is a spiritual discipline. And when you're standing up, we're standing with you. And all of you around the country, we are so grateful over the last 10 years and 78 years of FCNL's history. You have stood with FCNL every step of the way, and you've made this work possible. The changes we've talked about today, the growth of the organization, the relationships. I mean, I think, Diane, you talked about, in your time away from FCNL in the coming years, getting in touch with friends. Well, you've built so many of these relationships around the country too, which is so powerful.
I have, and I may come and see some of you when I travel. So just look out, or I may
get your spare bedrooms ready.
I understand there's space for me in Montana. I've already had that invitation. So Iowa, going back to see the stars. So anyway.
That's so fabulous.
Yeah. Thank
you, everybody. Any final words, Diane?
No, I just want to underscore, Stephen, your comment about community and that kind of steadfastness of FCNL. I couldn't think of a better place to finish my working life in the sense of pulling together both my spiritual and my political sensibility, and with a group of people who are so dedicated and so intent. Keep it up. Keep up your advocacy, keep up your financial support, and keep up your prayers and intentions. A lot of people tell me they hold FCNL in their prayers, and I think it makes a difference for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And thank you, everybody. Be well. Take care.
Bye.